everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, Pete Wright, and everybody else.
It's a big day.
Oh, we have so much to announce and talk about and follow up with. It's awesome.
I know. We have a lot of follow-up, and we're on the cusp of a very big month.
We are.
Right? October is kind of your month. It's your jam.
It is, yes. I share it with the breast cancer survivor folks. And
I think, isn't it Depression Awareness Month, too? I think there are a lot of awareness months in October.
Yeah.
But the big one is clearly ADHD.
Well, that's the one I'm focusing on. Yes.
Okay. Me too, then. I'll focus on that one too. We've got a lot to talk about. Today's show we're talking about ADHD, love, and chores, and I can't wait to hear how you unravel that.
I know, right?
So many announcements. You know the drill. Head over to TakeControlADHD.com to get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website, or subscribe for free to the mailing list, and make sure you don't miss a single episode each time it's released each week. Connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD, and call us. Leave us a voicemail at 503-664-4ADD to get your voice and your questions on this show. We'd love to hear from you, and we have some questions stacking up. I know we've got some digital questions. We've got some questions that are sort of medically oriented. We're working on it. We're working on shows around answers, though, so stay tuned. Keep listening. It's coming. Your answers are coming. Yes. Okay, where would you like to start on our announcements?
Okay, well, big announcement. A couple of big announcements. But the first thing, like you said, coming up in October is ADHD Awareness Month. And there are some things going on that I want to share with our audience. First one is the ADHD Awareness Expo. And this is a free virtual conference of several different ADHD experts, including myself. I get to be a part of it, which I'm really excited about.
Absolutely.
Yes, that you can sign up and listen to all kinds of different topics that range from organizing, time management, productivity, mindfulness. I mean, when you go to their website and check out all the different experts and the different topics, it's pretty exciting. This is going to be held October 1st through the 7th. And so for people to sign up, register, be a part of this, head over to my website or to the show notes to register. And I'm going to ask you that you use my link if you don't mind, so that they know that that you heard about it from me. That's always nice.
Absolutely.
Where they heard about it from. So the ADHD Awareness Expo is the first thing I want. Yeah.
Excellent. So the link, the appropriate link will be in the show notes. You can swipe over in your podcast app of choice that you're listening on right now. Swipe over there and click on the ADHD Awareness Expo, and you can jump right to register to join Nikki.
Okay, so what's next is I want to share in this ADHD Awareness Month. So I'm going to be offering a few different things. On October 3rd and October 17th, I'm going to be hosting 2 webinars at 3 p.m. Pacific. So if you want to register and be a part of these webinars, please do so. You are going to have to register online. So again, you can either go to the show notes to sign up, or easier is if you sign up for my newsletter, you will get notification of both webinars, what the topics are going to be, and how to sign up. So either sign up on my newsletter or go straight to the website show notes, or this show notes, and you can register.
Okay. And that's an easy one. And what are you going to be talking about on those webinars?
Okay, well, it's only September 18th right now.
Yeah. So it's a little early. Is that what you're telling me?
It's a little early for me to actually say it out loud.
Okay.
But they're going to be great. They're going to be ADHD related, and you're not going to want to miss them.
Who would ever even dare to suggest?
I know, right? Yes. So, yeah, that's still kind of, to be determined. I knew you were going to ask that too.
Well, you throw it out there. I got to know.
I know.
Inquiring minds and all that whatnot.
I will figure it out very, very soon, I promise.
Okay.
The other thing that I'm doing, and this is actually going to start September 22nd, which is coming up this Friday, and I'm going to do this all the way through the end of October. I'm going to be jumping onto my Facebook. So that's Take Control ADHD. If you are not a fan of the Facebook page, please do that, because every Friday, Again, starting September 22nd to the end of October, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live at 3 p.m. Pacific.
Fancy you. It's a Facebook live stream.
I know, right? I'm like so hip.
You are.
In the marketing
Check
world.
Your ID. Are you a
social
millennial?
media? Huh? Am I
millennial?
Yeah, no. Add 20 years, and maybe minus 20 years, I should say, not plus. No, but I thought this would be a fun way to connect with people, and I have different topics for each Friday. And it's also a great way for you guys to just ask me questions or comment or anything. So if you happen to be around and you see that I'm live, please jump on to that feed, because I'd love to hear from you. And of course, the extra support is always great to know that people, are there.
Yeah,
so I'm
absolutely. All right, so starting this Friday.
Yes, that's going to start this Friday through the end of October.
Excellent.
And then I also, for the month of October, will be holding a special promotion for both my coaching services and online products. I don't want you to miss that. So the way to know about that is to sign up for my newsletter. So please do so. Again, that will be in the show notes. But I am going to be offering a couple of different promotions for both things, services and online products. But you have to be part of the newsletter to get the details. So please do that.
Excellent. We'll put the link also in the show notes. And I think before we we have one more thing before we get started.
Yes,
to
we
talk
do.
about. I feel like we're piling on the announcements today. This is just the announcement podcast.
And we're usually not that way. That's what's so funny is we usually don't have a ton, but we do today.
Well, it's a big month. And I think to celebrate the big month and all the work that Nikki does to continue to help and provide resources and support this show, we have launched a Patreon page. For those of you who don't know what Patreon is all about, it is simply a way for listeners and supporters of creators, whether they're people who make podcasts or YouTube videos or authors. It is a way for you to directly support these creators monetarily through just a trickle of $1, $5 a month. If you support what they do, if you get something out of what they do, and in this case, what we have been doing since 2010 as a service to the community, we are asking for a little bit of support as we continue to grow. And as you can hear, Nikki has so many things going on as we leap into ADHD Awareness Month. What better time than to do a little bit of a membership drive to help support us, help support what Nikki is doing and what we're doing through this podcast to bring you great interviews, great resources we hope that have helped to make your life better in some way, shape, or form over the last 7 years. If you feel good about it, if you feel like it is a sound financial decision for you to help us out, we'd sure appreciate you jumping over to patreon.com and sharing a little bit with us. Now, what does that look like? We have 2 tiers. One is the ADHD Good Karma tier, which is just, hey, you've been listening a long time. We know there are a lot of you out there. Throw us $1 a month, and it's a couple of cups of coffee a year, and there it is. Good ADHD Karma. We just appreciate it. And you know what? I threw something else. I haven't even told you about this, Nikki. I haven't even told you. If you join that group, I'm going to go ahead and release the podcast episode for the week early.
Oh, nice.
Right? So you get every user on Patreon, once you sign in, you get your own unique podcast RSS feed. So you just subscribe to it in iTunes or your podcast app of choice, and you can listen to this show as soon as Nikki and I are done with it, not when it launches the next week, right? So you get a couple of days early to hear us. What do you think? I think that's great.
I think it is great.
It's super easy, and that's awesome. Any subscriber. The ADHD Insider is our next tier, and that's at $5 a month. And what we offer here is access to a brand new private Facebook community just for Patreon supporters of this show. We are looking to create a community of folks who are seeking a better way to live, looking for support, building living systems, digital systems, whatever. Nikki and I will both be in there and looking to
answering questions, commenting,
connecting resources. Hopefully, we'll be able to bring some of our guests in to answer questions. We'll be.
It's a great way too. I just have to say, it's a great way to talk about that week's podcast.
Yeah.
And so, if people have additional things that they want to say or comment, and they are a member of that, I mean, that's a great platform to talk about the current podcast, current events, whatever.
Absolutely. We're also going to be doing even more Facebook Live events and Q&As and extra content, extra extended interviews with ADHD specialists and guests that come on the show that when we talk for too long and we end up having to cut for time, we're going to be releasing the extended episodes in your podcast feed for subscribers. So
and maybe some bloopers.
I make no claims to my own bloopers, but I will gladly share any of Nikki's. Let's just say that.
Hey! What about the beginning of this show when you were better, when it sounded like butter?
I'm not even sure that exists anymore. You're speaking completely in fabrication.
Right. Liar, liar, pants on fire.
Is right. Well, anyway, we don't need to prolong this part, but we sure appreciate any of you who are interested in jumping over to Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast, or there's a link on the website and in the show notes. We'll put the link in the show notes. Just swipe over there. It's the easiest way to jump to it. Set up an account very, very quick, and we sure hope that we can count on your support as we continue to do this. We're looking forward to a lot of great things that to come, but we need a little bit of help. There you go. What do you think?
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much.
Move on from the promotion stuff. For crying out loud, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, I absolutely loved talking to Melissa Orlov last week.
She's so great.
I loved it. So I want to continue the conversation around relationships and ADHD. But first, before I dive into that, I just have to mention and give a shout out to my lovely parents who just celebrated their 50th year anniversary.
50 years?
50 years.
That's amazing.
Talk about odds that were completely against them. So my folks are, they were 18 when they got married.
Wow.
And 18 and pregnant.
Wow.
Yes. Never knew that until I figured out that, my sister and I were like teenagers, and we were like, okay, this doesn't make sense because they got married in September. Yeah, totally. And you were born in April. So, and of course we were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she was pregnant. You can just imagine what two teenage young girls were thinking when they found that out about their parents. But God bless them. They were, 18 years old, pregnant, and they've been together for 50 years. It's amazing. Amazing love story. And we had a great weekend celebrating with family and friends. And I just have to say, I am just so honored and thankful to witness such a beautiful love that they have had. And I'm so lucky that they were my parents. I was telling in my speech, I was telling the people that were there, I said, growing up, my parents were always so respectful of each other. They never fought in front of us. They never yelled at each other. They were never mean to each other. They've always been very loving, very affectionate. And you can just tell that there's just this deep, deep love.
Yeah.
And it was just sweet. And I was telling my dad about that during the weekend. And my dad said, well, it was never really a reason to argue. Like when we had a problem, we worked it out. Like, wow. It was just really cool. Now, my dad's personality is pretty laid back. I mean, he is a very easygoing person. And my mom is definitely more high strung. And so it probably really, truly is like opposites attract. Like, he mellows her out, but yet she kind of keeps him on track, you know?
Totally.
So it definitely is an opposites attract that works. But one of the sweetest things I have to share is towards the end of the evening, my dad turned off the TV because we were all watching football. and turned off the TV, and he put on a song from Alan Jackson called Remember When.
Mm-hmm.
And this is their song. And it was so sweet because everybody's quiet and we're like, okay, what is my dad doing? And he said, well, I want to ask my lady to share a dance with me. And so in the middle of the kitchen, with all of us there watching, they slow danced to Remember When. And it was such an emotional moment and just one of those things that, I will always remember.
So sweet.
It was very sweet.
For crying out loud. That's amazing.
I know. So then I thought, okay, well, we've got to talk about on the podcast, continue this, idea about relationships and ADHD and all that stuff. And I thought, well, one of the reasons that I think my parents' love has lasted is they have a really good understanding of who does what. And they have gotten the household chores down to a T.
It's like a labyrinth of thought connections that you made to get here.
I know, right?
So much.
I know. Connections.
Connections.
It's that dot to dot. It's
that's
okay, here we go. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about household chores.
Okay. All right. So household chores. This is not so much about doing what you're told when you're told to do it.
No. In fact, the information I am sharing is from Melissa Orlov's work. Okay. This is not my idea. This is not my work. In fact, I need to take her advice and put it in my own home. But and then you can actually learn a lot more about this topic and other topics, as we mentioned last week in her book, The Couple's Guide to Thriving with ADHD.
Absolutely. And her community, Marriage and ADHD. And we've got a link to that in the show notes as well.
Yes, absolutely. Because really, I mean, she's spot on. And I'm just going to take a few of the points and then we can kind of add into, what we think.
Sure.
But yeah, this was good. And I picked this chores thing too, because this actually comes up a lot with my own clients. Because getting stuff done around the house is stressful. It's overwhelming. And it definitely seems to get pushed to the side when you've worked all day and whatnot. So a couple of things I think we need to avoid is, and this is actually from her book, is having the non-ADHD partner be in charge of everything.
Mm-hmm. That stuck with me last week because I made a comment in the conversation last week and I used the word normal. And when I use the word normal, I tend to use it in air quotes, but I feel like she didn't hear it that way.
Right.
But what I meant to say is that there is that the danger of this relationship is that there is a non-ADHD baseline that gets set around which everything else has to operate. And that's the scary thing, right? Especially if you are the only person with ADHD in your household, then it starts to feel very isolating.
Yes. And I think that's very true. And then I think you also run the risk of what she was talking about last week too, with that parent-child role. That if you have the non-ADHD partner be in charge of everything, then it really does feel more like a parent to a child. And there's so much resentment that can be built from that. So a couple things to definitely avoid. And I think what you're saying is it's too isolating if you're not a part of it at all. Mm-hmm. And have say in what how you want it done or how, what you want to do too.
Sure.
Actually 3 things to remember. And she doesn't talk about this as much, but this is something that my own insight that I want to share is that we all grew up differently. And we are taught, by how we grew up, how to kind of keep house. I mean, if your parents were disorganized and messy, then that's what you're used to, then that's what you're used to. If your parents were more on the OCD side where everything was, in their place and everything was clean, then that's what you're going to know to be. And so I think we have to remember that we all grew up differently. We all have different ways of doing things. And we definitely have different tolerances. And we've talked about this before. Of when it comes to our messy home, how much is too much, and she mentioned this last week too. That what I made, and I'll talk about this in a second. But just having those areas that are just for the person with ADHD and the person that's not, and respecting both, because we all have different tolerances. I mean, it's true.
Absolutely.
And the other part to remember as well is that household duties again are overwhelming when you're already busy with a schedule. You don't have a lot of time to do it. They're boring. You don't want to do them. And then when we don't do them, we feel bad about not getting them done sooner. And I think that is very true for the ADDer, is that there's that shame that gets wrapped around it for not getting it done. So just a few things.
That's self-perpetuating, right? Like once you get into that point of being of living with that shame, it makes it less likely you're going to complete whatever comes next, and it makes it more likely that you will feel somehow shamed or disciplined from your partner.
Well, and if that partner is making them feel that way by what they're saying, absolutely. I mean, I think it can make it definitely worse if you have a partner who's not, maybe as understanding, or who's just so frustrated.
That really is the big lesson for me. That it's first of all, it's not one-sided, and B, it takes a lot of work to be constantly sort of aware of the dynamic.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is the suggestion from her in her book, and she says to approach chores in sort of in a business-like way. And there's 5 steps to this. The first step is to state the situation. So I take that as, let's look at our chores. And the second step here is to create a list of regular one-time chores. So I kind of look at that as the same, you state the situation, what has to get done. Let's make a list of what needs to get done. What are things that need to be done daily? What needs to be done, weekly? And then there's also those one-time things that maybe only have to be done once a year or whatever. If something's broken, you got to call the plumber. That may be just a one-time thing, So I think it's communication is really what it goes down to, but approaching it in a way that's just very business-like, take the emotion out and just say, okay, this is our situation. This is what has to get done. And then the third step here is determining, what is the best fit for each helper. So what am I good at? What are you good at? What could we delegate out? She doesn't talk about delegation, but I certainly want to throw that in. If both of you hate to clean the house, is it possible for you to hire a housekeeper? So I would say, look at that. Also, if you have a family who have kids, or if your kids are old enough to do chores, make sure you get them in this meeting, because they can be part of that as well. And figuring out what they're going to be doing. And then the fourth step is getting the routines in place and having a regular meeting to coordinate efforts, just to kind of make sure that, okay, everybody knows what they're doing. And then the fifth step is measuring the success of efforts and adjusting to whatever needs to be adjusted. And I'm going to talk about some roadblocks in just a second, but I'm curious, from you, Pete, what you think about that kind of 5-step approach.
Oh, I think it makes a lot of sense. And in particular, just the act of bringing many people together, bringing everyone who is involved, the kids, or parents, if they're living with you, I mean, whatever relations that live in the house, who take part in the house, it's an equalizing effort, right? It allows you to sort of share the weight of routine, and rather than having it sit on the shoulders of one or two people. And particularly, it takes the weight off of the person who maybe bears the brunt of the disorganization.
Right, right.
And, there's something to that.
Well, and I like in step number 3, she says, determine the best fit of activity for each helper. And I like that because it really does make you think, what do I enjoy doing? And this is for the person that has ADHD, because if you're doing something that you enjoy a little bit more than something else, then we're putting some forethought into it so that, we're not trying to make you do something that you absolutely just hate to do or you don't have time to do. So she had this example of, don't give somebody something to do 30 minutes before they have to leave for work, and maybe that might be getting lunches ready for your kids. Well, maybe that person has to leave at 8. That's not the best fit for them. Let's give it to somebody else or whatever. Right. I just think it gives you some thought. It just lets you think about really, what makes sense. So I like that.
I think the real challenge comes in this next part, right? Which is
yes.
Around what happens when it falls apart.
Yes. And it will, because nothing works exactly the way that we expect it to. So in her book, she definitely, covers different kinds of roadblocks and some things that can happen. But there were two that really stuck out at me that are common ones that I see with my own clients. And the first one is that follow through. So one partner didn't do what they committed to do. And so what do you do in that situation? And, first thing is we have to remember that unfinished chores, that's not a sign that your partner doesn't love you. But it's very easy to take it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But what it really is more of a sign is that the ADHD got in the way. And there may have been some kind of lack of structure or something that didn't happen. And so the solution here is to remain calm, of course, not beating the other partner up. But the solution then, of course, is to remain calm, remember not to take it personally, and just figure out together, what went wrong. And what really sticks with me on the conversation that we had with Melissa last week is she says, be partners, not adversaries. And that just so much resonates with me. So, something didn't get done. Okay, well, let's not be so mad at each other about it. Let's figure out how to make it work. And maybe that person was just overscheduled that week, or they got distracted and they just forgot about it. And they didn't intend to, they just simply forgot. And so together you can kind of come up with ways of how that might get done this week. But I think it is about being patient and really takes effort from both parties. Like, we don't want, as Dr. Hollowell will say, we don't want to use ADHD as an excuse. It's just it's an explanation, but it doesn't excuse you from not doing the chore if you've committed to it. But now we got to figure out how to get you to do it, so that your partner isn't full of resentment.
Again, I'm struck by the whole idea that every one of these suggestions is all about balancing the load, right? It's not creating an environment of isolation where someone has blame. And it seems so logical to come at it this way, that we're just balancing the field, right? We're just balancing the field for a discussion about ownership of chores, about ownership of what went wrong, about trying to figure out a solution, a shared solution. It seems so logical. It seems so natural, and yet it is the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing around every corner. There's an opportunity to judge, to be judged, to be frustrated, and to initiate some sort of a blame. It's very natural to fall out of this habit, and I think that's a thing I just want to latch onto. It's okay if it's hard. It's okay if it's hard, right?
Absolutely, and it's hard no matter if you have ADHD or no ADHD. Right. I mean, relationships, living with someone is hard, Truly. And these are issues for everybody. And I think that the biggest thing that I've learned in my own marriage, and what I hope to continue to do is that communication has to be open. Like, I cannot just assume that, my husband knows that I'm frustrated, because he doesn't. I can't just assume that he knows to do certain things. Like, if he may not see, and I'll talk about this when we talk about different tolerance levels, but he may not see the same things that I see. So I think that the worst thing you could probably do is to keep quiet and not say anything, because then that resentment is just going to keep building. And chances are the other partner really doesn't know how you feel. And, but again, I think I remember, gosh, I'm throwing out all of these like weird things that I remember, but Dr. Phil, out of all people, I remember he was talking about relationships and one of his shows, I guess, and how you fight is a really good indication of if you're going to stay married or not. I think that's probably true, because if you're really disrespectful, the marriage is probably not going to make it. And in this situation, I can see the arguments building and the resentment building. And so if you can communicate that, and share what you're thinking, I think you're probably going to be in a better situation. But again, people, I am not a marriage therapist.
Yeah, right.
I mean, this is just an opinion. I don't know if it's right or wrong. So,
well, let's talk about tolerance levels then.
Yeah. So different tolerance levels was something that she mentioned in the book. And I'm glad that she did, because it's something that you and I, again, have talked about with organization.
Yeah. Back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day. I mean, we all have different levels of tolerance when it comes to, messes and how organized things are. And I loved when she shared with us last week that each person, let them have their space. And so have one side of the closet be the one partner's space and the other is the other. And neither person can really say anything about that space. If they want to keep it messy, they keep it messy. You just don't say anything. If there's an area that you really care about, then, make that part of your chore list so that you can make sure that you take care of it. And again, I think that's why dividing the chores in the way that she suggests makes so much sense, because you really are thinking it through on what is possible and what's realistic. And compromise, right? I mean, compromise. I know it's if somebody's really messy and somebody's really clean, it's going to be tough, but both people have to compromise, because you want to stay married.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Instead of one person having to give up everything, I mean, really, again, goes back to balance, what you were talking about. It's that balance and finding out what's, important to each person. And something that's worked for us that's still a work in progress, because these the way that she approaches chores is definitely something that I need to do with my family and sit down and divvy it up to my kids, especially. But one thing that does really help, and this goes back to the communication part, is if I need certain things done, so say we're going on a trip or we're leaving town for the weekend or we're having a party and I just need to have certain things done, what I've done is I will make a list for my husband. I will make a list for my son and my daughter and tell them exactly what I need them to do. Now, remember, I don't have ADHD, so it's pretty easy for me to go through and break it down that way.
Yeah.
But what I do is I give them that list and I'll say, okay, this is the stuff I need done and this is the time I need to get it done. And it works. It works for us because there's no resentment. I don't have to assume that they know what they need to do. They don't have to worry about it because I'm giving them a list. It's not being controlling. It's really just divvying up everything that needs to be done so that it doesn't all fall on me.
Yeah. Right.
So I try to be, respectful of like, okay, we're a family of 4. We're all capable of making this party happen, but this is what, each of us have to do.
But you know what? It's interesting about that is like in terms of balancing the field, because one of your skills and your abilities is making the list and being able to break down those projects and see the forest for the trees, so to speak. It's easy for you to take on that responsibility. And when you do that, that means they don't have to, right? They're sharing the load in a different way.
Right. And I think that if you do have a spouse who doesn't have ADHD, that is a very realistic chore to put on to them, in the sense of, can you be the one that sort of makes sure that, the things get done, because that's not what we want. But if you need help breaking stuff down, I think it's okay for the non-ADHD person to do that. If you both have ADHD, that is going to be a different dynamic. And I would say that ADHD, it shows up differently in different people. And so find out what your strengths are, the two ADDers, what are your strengths, and together figure out how to make this work. And if you still need help, then that's where you can probably get some help from a counselor or a therapist or some outside viewpoint just to help you if you need to have further help, But I do think that even if you both have ADHD, because it shows up differently, if you work together, I bet you could still come up with something really great for the two of you.
And definitely check out Melissa's book, Clearly,
Yes.
it is a terrific resource. It is inspirational for us to talk about, and we have to continue to plug that. So jump over to the show notes, click the link. You can pick it up on Amazon and see for yourself just how useful it is.
So one last thing before we wrap up is that we've got some great interviews coming up in the next few weeks. And so I just wanted to make sure that people, if you're new to the show, to make sure you keep coming back, because we have not only all of like the 300 shows that we have already recorded, but we've got a show coming up on how you talk to others about your ADHD. We're going to talk about navigating the storms of ADHD. We're going to have a show about being newly diagnosed. We're going to also have Lori Dupar come back on the show and talk about ADHD management.
Excellent.
We're going to talk about ADHD strengths. James Ochoa is going to be on the show. All of this, again, is happening in October. October is going to be this fabulous month. So I just want to make sure that people knew what was coming up.
That's right. It is Take Control, the ADHD Podcast Awareness Month, which happens to be celebrating ADHD Awareness Month.
We so are.
We're so meta. This is great stuff, great resources, and so much to look forward to. Thank you all for downloading and listening to the show. And thanks in advance for your support over on patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. We sure appreciate it. Thanks for your time and your attention, everybody. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next week right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.